The Seahawks and the Rams, both teams are 7-2. Both are winners of 4 straight games. Who comes out on top in this big divisional matchup? Welcome back to the BetCanada channel. Katie Caldwell and Jeff Lloyd back with you today. So, Jeff, you and I have talked about these teams a lot. I think these are two of the best teams in football. This feels like less of a routine divisional matchup to me and more like a balance of power in not just the division, not just the NFC, but the NFL.
The biggest thing with this is both teams sitting at 7-2. This now becomes a two-game jump, essentially. Somebody's gonna
Exactly.
get to 8-3, I mean, somebody's gonna go to 7-3, somebody's
Mhm.
naturally gonna go to 8-2. But right off the bat, you're gonna have a tiebreaker that goes into it since we're talking about 2 teams certainly within the same division.
Right.
You really like the way and this is where for me, this is the po we all get excited about the beginning of the year. Everybody loves the end of the year. But it's nice to see when teams are starting to maybe separate themselves from the overall, and I think that's
Mhm.
certainly the case with the Rams. I think it's certainly the case, with the Seattle Seahawks. You look at just Sam Darnold's play right now, and you kinda look at Seattle and go, Are you sure Sam and his agents aren't gonna come talking at the end of the year like, "Hey, that deal we might have signed, even though it might not be worth exactly," and you have to appreciate it for Sam, and the thing is with all of this in the NFL where it's quarterbacks are pressed into saving franchises at such an early age, so much pressure is put on them, so many fail, and we've talked about this with other guys, but Sam Darnold right now is getting to a level where he's being talked about as a top 10 quarterback, if not better.
If not
So
higher,
we
exactly.
yes, we don't normally get the reclamation project
Mm.
to reach this level.
Right,
That
exactly.
is, it's just enough that Sam, hey, he battled through everything. He's still all right. He got his starting job back. He got a team to show some faith in him. But Seattle right now just looks like the smartest team in the league because
Mhm.
they said, look, even though it's really only 1 year that we're basing it on off of Minnesota, this is the type of faith that we have in you. And I think for Sam, it was just that comfort level of,
Yes.
you know what, this is where I'm at. I'm going to be here. It's not, oh, well, I'm straight, and even the way it worked last year in Minnesota, it was never supposed to happen. Who knows if McCarthy's knee didn't go bad, where Sam Darnold would even be right now?
That's a really good point.
So it's all about you never know about this stuff. And for Sam, obviously, his intention was to go out and play great ball for the Minnesota Vikings.
Mhm.
Didn't think it was going to lead to a long, sustaining contract where the Seattle Seahawks were going to say, that's it. You know what? You are our guy. So that's where it's really fun for a guy like Sam. The Rams, you feel it's probably a little different. I mean, I remember, Katie, we were doing these conversations in August, and there were a lot of people making it sound like, Matthew Stafford was being, helped out of bed every morning by like 3 staffers. Like, it made it sound
Yeah.
like we were really nervous whether or not Matthew Stafford, how much he was actually gonna give the Rams this year.
There
Not
was so
only is
many
he out
questions
there
about his health, and I remember even thinking, are we ever gonna see Matthew Stafford play again? Let alone because there it just felt like the questions kept continuing every single week and we had no answers, and then there's all these jokes flying around Twitter of like, "Oh, he's got a clone and a body double and everything," and then now to go from all those questions about his health, are we even gonna see him play this year, to he's playing at what you could call an MVP level, has just been a wild story in itself.
Exactly. He's really just, and you have to think, and you get to a certain age where, how much more is there? And,
Right.
who knows? Maybe this could be a Matthew Stafford, swan song. Rams have 2 first-round picks coming up this year. One of them is Atlanta's.
Wow.
So if
Yeah.
there's, a time, because it might not happen very often for the Rams because, they're usually pretty good, this might be a year where, even, Matt may stay, but they still may say, "Look, we've got to start thinking about life after Matthew Stafford." So certainly, some decisions coming for the Rams and some conversations to be had after this season. But right now, locked and loaded, obviously, Puka
Mhm.
Nakua, you bring in a guy like Devontae Adams, and, I think Devontae Adams is kinda on that same path too. He just plays so aggressively that you see that the age is kinda getting to Devontae Adams a little bit. You mix in a nice running game, they get after the passer week in, week out. The secondary starts playing a little bit better. It's I mean, we're not, basically splitting an atom here by saying this is probably the 2 hottest teams in the NFL right now.
Yep.
They are probably the 2 of the hottest teams in the
Mhm.
NFL right now, and this is, probably for both of them, it's a good test. Okay,
Big
we
time.
think they're really good. They think we're really good. This is certainly teams that are probably going to make it to the final 4 of the
Mhm.
NFC playoffs. So you wanna start gauging where you think you're at against, the top of the NFC.
Yeah, this is such a fun time for these 2 teams to meet in the season. Like, talk about 2 teams peaking at the right time. I look at the Seahawks, top 5 scoring offense, top 5 scoring defense. The Rams, top 5 scoring offense, top 5 scoring defense. What does this game ultimately come down to?
It feels like it's probably gonna be, like, one mistake, right? Because I think that, I don't think it's gonna be
Yes.
high scoring, but I think it's gonna be something where, they stay on the same pace. Probably
Mhm.
a game in the 20s. Look, you saw what Seattle did last week, obviously, 2 strip sacks, took them both back to the house. We know how aggressive that Seattle defense can be. And, if there's one thing Matthew Stafford essentially never was, and certainly isn't at this point in his age, he's elusive. He can move, but, elusive, I definitely wouldn't use as a characteristic for Matthew Stafford. And, one mistake, and it might not even be any of the major players, a muffed punt,
Mm.
a fumble from a running back, something that can just come back in a game of this magnitude with 2 teams this good, and that's what you're preaching all week long. If you are the Rams and you're Seattle, it's gonna be a mistake.
Yeah.
It could come down to something as simple as a false start on a
Mhm.
3rd and 3. And, it could change the entire momentum of everything. And, that's what you like though when you're getting into, games with better teams against each other. These are, certainly mistakes can be, you know, afforded in other
Mhm.
games for the Rams in Seattle, but now you're playing, on a field, on a level of somebody much more to your level. It's always gonna be about the minute things, the simplest things that can turn out to be major. So, I'm excited. And I think it's kind of a tough pill for the entire NFL world because it's a really nice 425 slate, side of maybe the Browns of Baltimore, but it is a really nice 425 slate. This really kind of feels like a tad bit of injustice. And look, I mean, if we're flexing games, and let's look into this in the future, does anybody really need to see Cowboys, Raider? Well, not that they're going to get to see it here in the States, but does anybody really need to
We can
see
in Canada,
Cowboys?
yeah.
Yes, Katie will host. Everyone is welcome. She will take care of everybody, bring some heat. She always needs heat out there in Canada. But do we really need a Cowboys Raiders Monday night game, or would the entire world like to sit down together, and especially people like us, because we have to have our eyes on so many games,
Right.
be able to devote 3 hours to what should be probably one of the best regular season games on the 2025 slate?
Oh, definitely. It truly is just an injustice that this isn't a primetime game where all of us can be watching only this right now. Game script wise, you're right. This is really interesting because I think it can come down to a mistake, maybe a special teams play. Both these teams are just so complete and playing so well. In terms of vulnerabilities with both teams, I don't really see a lot. The Rams can struggle sometimes against heavy personnel sets. And when I look at the Seahawks, they're a team that can run a lot of heavy personnel. How do you see that matchup?
Yes. Yes, and they're very deep at the tight end position,
Yeah.
and, this is one thing that I think Seattle, the last couple of years, where we really have not really seen it show up so much this year, because
Mm.
Sam Darnold, JSN, the passing game, kinda really cooking. But
Oh,
we've been able to see Seattle in the past where, maybe, hey, it's a little bit more defense. Let's run it a few more times than we're accustomed to. And, that you certainly have to try to take that advantage because the one thing with this Rams defensive line, and, I like all these guys, but they're all really good pass rushers. Usually, when you talk about a starting defensive line that all has great pass rush ability,
mhm.
what's usually the one thing you're going to try to do to them? A, we're going to try to run because I want you to just rush all day and hopefully gas yourselves out a little bit.
Yeah.
But normally, big, bad run stuffers aren't usually necessarily good pass rushers. So I want to take the aggressiveness away from you. And even if it's, look, if I can get 3.5 yards of carry, that's enough where I'm just doing it enough, throwing it enough. And if I can do that and Sam can stay hot like he has been all year, we're trying to hopefully keep, the Rams offense, offset, sitting over on the sidelines. So I think for Seattle, it might be a little bit of a flip of the card here this week,
Mm.
where you might want to have a little bit more emphasis on the run game. praying the run game can give you some success. So if you are Seattle, that's where you're probably gonna have to have the advantage. And look, we talk all the time, and it is a beautiful building out there in Los Angeles, but you don't necessarily get a home feel from it.
It's not like if you're
So
playing in Seattle.
and we know Seattle can travel. So, I mean, if
Mhm.
you can do that, all of a sudden now you're on the road and maybe you're trying to shift the momentum of this game. And, therefore it puts you in a little bit of a stronger spot. Look, they're really good teams.
Mhm.
And look, somebody's gonna have to lose. It's just the way it's gonna go. But both of these teams here, you're putting yourself here in the driver's seat. And look, if you're the Rams and you're the Seahawks, you're looking at it and saying, look, we know how crucial the number one seed can be.
Mhm.
And you're starting to think about it. I mean, you're one of the few.
Yep.
You can be in that position where you can start to be, a little bit, noted and mentioning to you guys, look, it'd be nice if, come January, we didn't have to leave. And you're trying to push that. It should be it's gonna be a really good game. It really is. Looking forward to this one. For the Rams, everything I think with the Rams starts through the passing game.
Mhm.
They throw the
Yep.
ball to be able to run the ball. And, Puka, obviously healthy, and Adams, they work in the tight ends very well. Then all of a sudden they get themselves in a position where now it's, Kieran Williams and probably an undervalued and underappreciated back. Just you look at him and nothing wows you, but by the end of the game, you look in there and Kieran Williams just gives you a solid workload week in, week out. It again, I really think it's going to come down to a crucial mistake.
I do too. This one is just so interesting on both sides of the ball to me. Who wins this game and what is your score prediction? Even with my Seahawks fan bias, I have gone back and forth. I still have a Seahawks at a slight edge here, but then I just wouldn't really be shocked either way. I think it could be late 20s. I'm going to say 28-24 Seahawks.
I actually think I'm going to go checker on a checker here, and I think I agree with you. Um, this is one of those ones where I think Seattle's maybe a little bit lesser known. Sam Darnold, first year there, obviously moved around a lot of pieces. Some new personnel came in. This Ram team, other than essentially, Devontae Adams, not much there has necessarily changed from who they've been basically the last couple of years. So I think that might be an advantage for Seattle in this situation. And again, Seattle, it's and granted, we're going to LA, so it's not like you say, "Oh, well, this is the type of football that usually can parlay this time of year," because it's not like we're talking about weather's going to be a factor in LA.
Right.
Obviously, good defense always plays well. Trying to make an onus on running the ball a little bit more just to put the game script, the game, into your hopefully hands for Seattle. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. Seattle maybe, late field goal, but I'm with you somewhere in the 20s. But I think, Seattle edging it out by a couple of points, 2, 3 points, and taking a huge, huge win on the road. Yeah, I can totally see that. I think for Sam Darnold and that Seattle crew. And I think it also helps because it's all new to them. So
Mm,
maybe the pressure's not there yet. The Rams, we know where they're at with Stafford and I mean all this stuff. Pressure feels like it's more on the Rams in this situation where maybe Seattle's playing a little bit more house money.